Hey everybody, welcome to episode 4 of Paul and Chris Need a Haircut because this quarantine is just going on far too long. No, it's episode 4 of Unified with me, your co-host Chris Creamer, and of course from UniWatch, Paul Lukas. First of all, I want to thank everybody again for tuning in the first 3 episodes. We were at one point on the Apple iTunes list for most listened to episodes, which is amazing, I think, after only 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And thanks a lot for all your support. We're getting all your comments on Twitter and other social media and email, and I think it's awesome. I didn't expect this kind of reaction, to be honest, Paul, and I'm pretty thrilled about where things are going.
I am too. I can honestly say I think we've gotten like at most 1 or 2 vaguely negative responses. Like really, the response has been incredibly positive, almost uniformly positive, you might say. And yeah, it's kind of stimulating and invigorating, and it makes me even more enthusiastic than I already was about this project. So yeah, good baby steps so far, and lots of onward and upward still to come.
Wait a second, you said there's 2 negative comments.
There was, actually, well, okay. So for those of us who are watching us on video, and which I hope people are, because some people are watching on audio, but those watching on video have seen our new logo, which was created by Brian Gundel. And I did get some people were not nuts about the new logo. Most people loved it, but I did get a little lukewarm. Some people just weren't nuts about it, which is fine. You can't please everybody. But generally speaking, the response to everything, including the logo, has been very positive.
So let's just be clear. The negative responses to the logo, which we had nothing to do with, that was all Brian's fault. I'm kidding. Brian, you did a great job, of course, and you know that. We love the logo, and we're probably going to be the avatar of the show on the podcast platforms. So if you're tuning in on there,
it already is.
It already is. So you've already seen it if you're listening on there. And if you're watching on video, you've seen it in our fancy new intro animation that preceded this episode. So, Paul, you and I were talking before the show. You said you didn't do much this last week.
I didn't. We like to catch up with each other at the start of each episode. And honestly, I don't have much to share in terms of catching up between the pandemic and a snowy winter. I've just been sort of hunkering down. I can report, I'm happy to report, I do have a vaccination appointment for April. I live in New York State, where I'm in an elevated category because I have asthma. So I can jump, not to the head of the line, but at least a little closer to the head of the line. And so I have an appointment for mid-April, and I'm hoping to move that up actually starting this weekend. They're going to open a bunch of additional sites, so I may be able to do it a little sooner. And that's what passes for big news around here, that I have an appointment to have a needle stuck in my arm in April.
Well, I mean, that's pretty big. That's huge, though. And good. Congratulations. I'm glad you got in there. I used a estimated calculator to find out when I'd be able to do it, and they said 2031. So I'm hoping that gets moved up a little closer. They say maybe September up here for us.
Wow.
I hope, fingers crossed. My wife and I, we continued our quarantine binging of shows on Netflix and whatever platforms are out there. We started the pandemic with The Sopranos. It took us about 2 months to get through that. And what a 2 months that was. That was amazing. Then we moved on to the Great Canadian Show, whose title might be censored on this episode. I don't know, but it's called Schitt's Creek, which they filmed just down the street from where I live. And we did all 6 seasons of that. And then this week, we finally watched and finished The Office, which I'd never watched before.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why. Certainly my sense of humor.
Yeah. I love The Office. We watch reruns periodically. And of course, there was the British Office, and you're watching the American Office. There really should be a Canadian Office, don't you think?
Well, I don't know what it would be about. Maybe some mispronounced words and a few A's in there. I don't know. There'd be a hockey pool. One episode would be about an office hockey pool, I think. But I found myself like, it was becoming a daily tradition. I'd sit down, have my lunch, watch an episode of The Office. Kids would go to bed. We'd watch 3 or 4 episodes of The Office, and now nothing. There's like this big void. So yeah, I'm feeling the loss of The Office now, 9 years after everyone else. I have no one else to sympathize with me about that.
You can watch reruns like the rest of us. It's okay.
I think
I have faith that you'll adapt.
I think I'll manage.
Yeah.
So a big week in uniform news. Well, I guess give or take. It's always a big week for uniform news around here
for people like us. But there was some genuinely notable news this week.
There was, well, and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, to me that was in many ways the biggest news of the week. That the Jaguar, when you have anytime an NFL team makes a uniform change, that's a big deal. And in the Jaguars case, it's not really a change, but a redesignation that teal is going to be redesignated from their alternate jersey color to their primary jersey color. And what do we think about that? What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, anytime you have teal as an option in a color scheme, you got to go with it, right? Like teal versus black. Teal is much more interesting.
Absolutely, because so many teams wear black, and really nobody in the NFL wears teal or that particular shade that the Jaguars wear. So I'm all in favor of this. I just think they got to keep going. They got to bring back gold as a trim color. And, personally, I would say go all the way back to the Mark Brunell era uniform. Like, to me, that was like a modern classic uniform if they had just been smart enough not to mess with it. I love that original, the inaugural set that the Jaguars had. But even if they don't go back to that original typeface and the striping and so on, just bring back gold, because gold, I thought, as an accent with the teal worked so well. And I really didn't understand when they did this last overall makeover why they didn't include gold.
Well, compare that to their expansion cousins in Carolina.
Who have never changed. Really, the only uniform change they made is a little tweak to the helmet logo and the addition of the black pants.
Night and day between those two teams.
Yeah. So that's one big bit of news this week.
Sticking with football. Sticking with football.
It looks like we're going to be sticking with the placeholder name for the Washington football team for another season.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people are surprised about this. I'm not, knowing what goes into these rebranding efforts. You look at when a team just changes a uniform, right? Like, let alone an entire identity. A uniform change in the NFL takes 2 to 3 years.
Right.
And here we're talking about a complete overhaul, new name. I'm assuming a new logo. I can't imagine they're sticking with that W as their primary.
Right.
I'm sure there's a uniform adjustment coming with this. The colors will stay the same.
I imagine the colors are going to stay. I think they've said that, actually.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of things that happen with a new name that doesn't happen with a new uniform. And that's like trademark issues. You have to do a lot of focus testing. You have to make sure that it appeals to as many of your fan base as possible.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised this is taking as long as it is. I'm glad that they're giving us a heads up now that, okay, look, we're going to do it one more year and this is the last year. Get ready for 2022 because this is when it's going to happen.
It's sort of weird the way they quote unquote announced it, though. It was you've heard of like a soft launch or something like that. For those who don't know, the Washington football team has, in addition to their regular website, they have a separate website that's devoted just to the rebranding and the makeover of the team, the upcoming change in identity. And they quietly, I'm not even sure exactly when it was, sometime within the last week or two, they quietly put in sort of not fine print, but certainly not large print either. They said, expect new things coming in 2022. And that basically was their way of saying, we're sticking with the placeholder generic Washington football team identity for 2021. And they didn't make a big splashy announcement. They did email, the same thing on that website was contained in an email that went to fans and season ticket holders. But it's not like they put out a press release or a tweet even saying, okay, we're definitely sticking with this. It was very sort of on the down low.
That's not really a surprise if you think about it, right? The reaction whenever, and you see it in your comments when you talk about any team changing their name, especially for a subject as sensitive as this, people can get pretty nasty in the comments.
Yeah, but I mean, they've already gotten rid of the old name. It's just it's interesting the way they've gone about it, and it's certainly Daniel Snyder in general is not known for subtlety, right? or being sotto voce, as it were. So I've found it interesting that they've sort of soft pedaled this change. But anyway, it is we're broadcasting it. We're going to say it as bombastically as we can, I guess. That in case people are wondering, it's going to be another season of just the Washington football team. in the NFL, and I'm assuming the same uniforms with the numbers on the helmets and all of that.
Do we have any thoughts about what they're going to be called?
I don't. I usually don't try to speculate about this stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, it seems to me there's two schools of thought. There's the school of thought that includes something with the word red, like red tails or red hawks or whatever it might be, and something that doesn't include red, which could be any number of things, like the Federals or the Capital. Well, not Capitals, because the hockey team already has that, but something related to DC. I don't really. I'm not rooting for. I'm just glad the old name is gone.
Do you think Warriors is out of bounds?
I would not want that to happen personally. I'm not rooting for that. I think that's sort of like changing it without really changing it. It's like trying to keep the Native American connection. And like, if you're going to make a break, make a clean break.
I like Americans. I like Washington Americans. I think that would be but I liked Americans with the old logo, and I know that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So we'll see. I know that they've hired a branding agency. They had talked to several design and branding agencies, one of which actually reached out to me in terms of possibly me being a consultant to the work that they might have done. And I wasn't really sure about that, because that could create like a conflict of interest from a journalism standpoint. It became moot because that company did not get the contract with the team. They ended up going with another firm. But I guess what I'm getting at is that they are serious about, investing in and putting work into and resources into this change. And so we'll see what it turns out to be.
All right, we have another year, and then that'll be that'll be the big news of the summer next year, hopefully.
One thing that's worth sort of speculating about. Let's say the team does really well this year. Now, Washington made the playoffs last year, and I don't really think of them as a Super Bowl team or a Super Bowl caliber team, but they did make the postseason. Let's say they make it to the Super Bowl this coming season, and then you're going to change it. Like after the second season of Washington football team, and they make the postseason both years, and they go to the Super Bowl, and you know how superstitious teams are and fans are. Like, what happens then?
I guess
probably not going to happen, but it's sort of worth kind of wondering about.
They were division champions this year, weren't they?
Yeah. I mean, in the worst division in football.
Still, they were division champions. If we're looking for a realistic answer on that, I have a feeling that they're going to have to submit all this change with the NFL way before the Super Bowl even happened.
Before, yeah. But
would the NFL let them change their mind if they win the Super Bowl?
Yeah. That's an interesting sort of what if scenario.
Knowing the NFL and what the NFL letters sometimes stand for, I have a feeling they would not let them change their mind.
Right.
But that's speculation.
Now, one other bit of news, and this was pretty under the radar, and it's not a big deal, but I sort of raised an eyebrow when I saw this, is that Adidas has sold off Reebok, and because they're just going to concentrate on their own brand and their own business. And, it's not that long ago that Reebok had the NHL uniform contract. And it's not so long before that they had both the NHL and the NFL. And now, basically a decade after that, after controlling the uniforms for two different Big Four pro leagues, they are essentially an also-ran fitness brand. And it's kind of amazing. Like, I don't want to say how the mighty have fallen exactly, but it does show the sort of churn that can happen in the industry and the business. And right now, Nike seems so consolidated. They're running the uniform programs for three of the big leagues, right? The NBA, the NFL, and Major League Baseball, and they have a huge footprint in college sports as well. But I mean, it's not that long ago that Reebok was maybe not in quite as consolidated a position as Nike is now, but certainly it seemed like they were sitting pretty. So things can change.
Now, I don't know the history of takeovers and such, but at some point Adidas bought Reebok, correct?
Yeah.
Was that before they signed their exclusive deals with the jersey companies?
It was before. Reebok, I believe Reebok was... I shouldn't say, and I should know the answer before we talk about this. But even that, I mean, just that companies change hands. Companies are bought and sold. Brands, can be sort of flexible properties, and so it's interesting to see.
But essentially the Adidas of today is the Reebok of 10 years ago, right? Like in terms of staff, employees.
It's a lot of the same people. Yeah.
So it's basically Adidas bought Reebok, changed the name, and then spit it back out. But yeah, you're right. How the mighty have fallen, as you say. I mean, we see that also like back in the 90s. Well, CCM was everywhere in the NHL. Majestic in baseball, and what's Majestic now, right? Like, are they even anything?
Right. And they're like a division of Fanatics now, I think.
Yeah, like, and
but Majestic was never really anything but Major League Baseball. They never had much of a footprint beyond that. It was sort of interesting that way. They weren't as much of a full lifestyle brand as these other companies.
Reebok was everywhere.
Yeah,
one time. Yeah.
So that's our sort of introductory news bits for the day, and that brings us to our main topic, our big topic of the day, which I like to call Heroes of Zero. And we wanted to talk about this today because an interesting situation unfolded over the weekend, which was the New York Mets signed free agent pitcher Taijuan Walker. And it was one of those deals where it was announced that they were going to sign him. Sources confirmed that the deal was basically done, but he still had to pass a physical. So the Mets hadn't officially announced it. And that caused a lag of about 2 days, which is pretty standard in these types of situations. And during those 2 days, there was all sorts of speculation, all sorts of chatter among people who are into the kind of uniform minutia, because Taijuan Walker, with his previous team, the Toronto Blue Jays, had worn 00. And the Mets already had a pitcher on their staff, Marcus Stroman, who wears 00. And so this set up the possibility that the Mets could have 2 pitchers in the same starting rotation wearing 0 and 00, which has never happened before. And now, as it turns out, Walker is not going to wear 00. It turns out he's going to wear 99, which he previously wore with the Mariners and the Diamondbacks. So the Mets will not have this unusual situation in their rotation. But it's still worth discussing, this idea of 0 and 00 in sports. And I thought my feeling about it when I thought about it as a topic for this week was this would be such a perfect topic for us, Chris, because both Walker and Stroman, they both came to the Mets, who are my favorite team, from the Blue Jays, who are your favorite team.
Stop stealing our pitchers.
So I thought this is so perfect that, we both have, some skin in the game, so to speak, that we care about these players and these teams and these uniform numbers. And then you told me, you sort of surprised me by telling me what?
I'm not that into the numbers game, I guess.
Interesting. And that's so fascinating to me. So you're not into uniform numbers in general?
I mean, I am a little bit, but not to the same degree as I am with uniform design and logo design. Because to me, a player's number has nothing to do with the design of the jersey. Right now, an individual player's number, the font and all that, that's another thing. But yeah, I mean, when I was younger and I'd memorize all the players' numbers and all that, send them on the hockey cards. But now it's, I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm getting older. And
it's so interesting. Now you have a Wayne Gretzky jersey hanging behind you for those who are watching on video. Chris has a Gretzky 99 jersey. And of course, certain players are so identified with certain numbers. And like, surely like the thought of Gretzky and anything else, like that would matter to you, right? Like Gretzky wearing a different number.
Like that's iconic, right? Gretzky wearing 99, so much so that the NHL has retired that number league wide. He wore 19 in the juniors, I believe. But to Gretzky, right, numbers were so important. The reason why he wore 99 was because he liked Gordie Howe, who wore number 9. And then when he joined his first junior team, number 9 was unavailable. I can't remember if it was taken or retired, probably taken back then. And they said, well, just wear 2 9s, be 2 Gordie Howes. And that's how legend was born.
Right. Now, I remember a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about anniversary patches, and you told me how you stuck around and played like an extra year of softball, I think, something like that, an extra season, because your team was due to wear an anniversary patch on their jerseys, and you wanted to be able to wear that. So have you been particular about the uniform numbers that you've worn in the various like recreational sports you've been involved in?
When I've gotten a choice, yeah. I mean, most of the sports I've played, they just hand you a jersey.
Right.
And yeah, I guess if I had a choice, I'd pick one. Now I'm at a point where like I can actually manufacture and produce the jerseys because I run the team and I brand the team. So I pick 97 because that's just the number I use for everything.
Oh, is that because SportsLogos.Net was founded in 1997?
That is a much better story than the real story.
I'm looking at the logo behind you.
Yeah.
For those who listen on audio, Chris has the SportsLogos.Net logo behind him, which says established 1997. That's why I thought of that.
So I mean, we're going a little off topic, but I'm gonna stick with this because a lot of people ask me about this, and frequent visitors of my site will notice the majority of uniform graphics I have on there say player 97.
Right.
Yeah. So the story I tell people is because that's the year the site started. It's not true. But I stick with it because it's so much better than the real story. The actual story is every year I used to buy the newest EA Sports NHL hockey game. So it started with getting NHLPA Hockey 93 for Christmas. And then, as I would get money, like birthday money, I'd save it. I'd buy NHL 96. One year I bought NHL 97. I needed to pick a number for my player. I said, I'll pick 97 because it's NHL 97. And that just became my number going forward. And whenever I needed to use a default number or a placeholder number, I'd always pick 97. So when the website came, I had to pick a number. I put 97 on the back. So it's just a coincidence that the site started.
But a good one, a happy
good one. Yeah. So even to this day now, like, so with the slow pitch team, I wear 97, or if I get a jersey and, I put my own name on the back, it'll say Creamer 97.
Interesting. Okay, but even if you're not that into numbers, aside from 97,
yeah,
I feel like this 000 thing is like, those aren't just any numbers.
No.
And in fact, in Major League Baseball, since the Mets are not doing it, since Taijuan Walker did not choose 00, that preserves the status of the 1985 Blue Jays, again, your favorite team, as the only team in Major League history who have had a 0 and a 00 on the roster simultaneously. And that was Al Oliver, who wore 0 for many teams in his career, and Cliff Johnson, who I don't think wore 00 for anyone else besides the Blue Jays. Now, that was 1985. I'm assuming you were too young, like that. Right. You have no memory of the 85 Blue Jays.
I was 2.
You were 2. But I'm sure you're aware of this distinction. And like, do you like that as a Blue Jays fan, that the Jays are the only team to have, like, are you sort of secretly, or maybe not so secretly, glad that Taijuan Walker didn't choose 00 to preserve the rarefied status of the Blue Jays as the only team to have done this?
It's a good question. I like how you brought me into this topic.
Yeah.
To be honest, I never thought about it. But now that you bring it up, yes, I'm absolutely rooting for that. I always want, I'm going to forever hope that the Blue Jays are the only 000 team now, because it seems like a cool badge of honor to have.
Yeah, it's like, it's one of those little eccentricities, right?
Here's the only thing I know about Cliff Johnson wearing 00 is that he broke the Major League Baseball pinch hit home run record when he was wearing 00.
Oh, interesting.
There you go. Okay.
Single season or all time?
All time, like a career. And then he held that record for a long time till Matt Stairs, good old Canadian boy, broke that record a couple years ago.
Now, what do we think? So what do you think of having, aside from the Blue Jays and aside from preserving their distinction, what do you think about having 0 and 00 on the same baseball team in general, and this potential Mets situation in particular? Cool or not cool? Like, would it have been better if the Mets had done it because there were 2 pitchers involved? Like, did that make it better, or did that make it worse?
Ooh,
because people are very particular sometimes about the numbers that pitchers wear. They shouldn't wear single-digit numbers and so on.
That's interesting. I didn't even consider that as 2 pitchers. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, so to answer your question, is it cool? Yeah, it'd be cool if they both were 0 and 00. Do I think it should happen? I don't know. It's certainly a cool situation. It seems like it would be awfully confusing in some way to have 2 players with what is essentially the exact same number and what are also not numbers at all, right? Like I don't think zero is even a number, let alone double zero. Well, what do you think about that?
I was really rooting for it to happen. I like uni-numerical eccentricities and aberrations. I love the idea of the Mets, especially I would love it for any team, but especially for my favorite team. I do worry a bit that like there's so much copycat culture in sports that, you know, once one team did it, I could sort of imagine there being like a rash of it happening and lots of teams going for it. But I was hoping for it to happen, and I was disappointed actually when Taijuan Walker decided to go with 99. And so yeah, I'm fine with it. I you know, there are people who don't think any baseball player should wear 0, much less double 0. There have been previous examples of pitchers wearing those numbers and other ball players as well. But I would be cool with it. And that.
Well, hold on. Who I was going to say. Yeah, I don't know if you're going to bring this up next or not, but we blame Mr. Met for that situation, right?
Yeah, well, so it turns out, in fact, just before we started recording this episode, Anthony DeComo, who is one of the Mets beat reporters, he writes for MLB.com. He apparently was on a call with Taijuan Walker, and Walker said that the reason he didn't take double 0 was because it's worn by the Mets costume mascot, Mr. Met. And this same situation came up back in 2003. Only one other Met has worn double 0, and that was first baseman Tony Clark in 2003. And fans started pointing out that, hey, that's Mr. Met's number. You stole Mr. Met's number, which honestly did not occur to me. Like I'm a Mets fan, but if you had asked me at the time, I could not have told you what Mr. Met's number was. I could have told you what Tony Clark's number was. And so Tony Clark, and it's never been clear to me whether he just did this on his own or if management sort of prodded him to do it, but he switched to number 52, and no Met has worn double 0 since, and it's never really come up in the discussion since until the Taijuan Walker situation, which to me seems sort of like a case of misplaced priorities. Like, shouldn't the player have like more pull than the mascot?
I would hope. It seems a little ridiculous.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I just like, yeah, I would phrase it exactly that way. In fact, and if necessary, couldn't Taijuan Walker buy Mr. Met a Rolex or something, just like the players do all the time?
That's right, or some sort of the world's largest, I don't know, some sort of head accessory. I don't.
Yeah, giant necklace or something.
There you go.
Something. It makes you wonder, has there ever been a situation before where a player's number potentially could have conflicted with the mascot's number?
It has to have happened, right? Like there are some teams where their mascot just wears the year that the team was founded.
Oh, is that right? I'm not even aware. Like, I know there's like teams where the mascot has worn like the number pi, like the symbol for pi,
which has not been taken by a player.
That has not been taken by a player. But yeah, I think this is a pretty rare situation where the player and mascot have come up with a uni number conflict, and of course that could only happen to the Mets.
Of course, certainly never happened to the Expos.
Yeah, probably
exclamation
not.
Mark.
Right, because UP had the exclamation point. That's right. Now, I know there have been some teams where the mascot wears the season number. Like in the late 90s, the mascot could wear 98, 99. And in the early aughts could wear 02, 03. And there's been one player who's worn something like that. And of course, that was Benito Santiago, who during his time with the Marlins and the Padres wore 09. He had previously worn just 9, and he went with 09, he said, because he didn't like the way the vertical strap on the back of his chest protector cut through the single numeral of the 9, and he wanted it a 2-digit number, but he still wanted it to be 9 so that the strap would go in between the numerals. And I'm pretty sure that a team would not be allowed to have 0, 9, and 9 as separate numbers. So you might say, why should the Mets or any team be allowed to have single 0 and double 0? And I feel like those are their own category, 0 and double 0. Personally, that's how I feel. It's a whole different kind of uni number universe.
It's the roulette rules, Paul. Right? There's 0 and a double 0 on a roulette wheel. Yeah,
exactly.
We
Now
got to
one
talk to
other,
Benito Santiago about that sometime. Do you
huh?
know his agent? Let's get Benito on the show and talk
It
to
would
him.
be great to have him on talking about this. But I do love, it's sort of interesting when you have these players with these unusual numbers and you see photos of Benito Santiago. And even if you think it looks wrong or
Mhm.
that shouldn't be a baseball number, isn't it kind of nice to live in a world where something that wrong could happen just every once in a while? And you can look at it and say, man, that's just sort of weird.
It's another excuse for me to point at something and say, look at that, and then tell a story about it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, before I want to talk about 0 and 00 in other sports as well, but before we do that, there's like a related issue, which is that Marcus Stroman, who again wears 0 for the Mets, has worn 3 different single-digit numbers in his big league career. He wore 6 with the Blue Jays.
Yep.
Then he came to the Mets and initially wore 7. And then he switched to 0. So what do we think of single-digit pitchers? Cool or not cool?
I think it was weird for a time, but now, like you say, there's a lot of copycats out there. And I'm not saying Stroman's a copycat. That's certainly not the case. But a lot of pitchers are now single-digit number pitchers when that just didn't happen, right? I can't remember a single-digit number pitcher, even if there was one.
Well, actually, as there've been, I think, more Blue Jays single-digit pitchers than any other team. You had Josh Howard.
Right. He was the first one I remember. And that was like what, 2007, 2008, something like that.
Somewhere in the aughts there. Yeah. And I feel like there's been a few other Blue Jays who've done it. I don't think the Mets ever had a single-digit pitcher until Stroman. And you're right, though, it is becoming a bit more common. It used to be unheard of. And in fact, in Game 6 of last year's World Series, which was the clinching game for the Dodgers, I loved it because I like single-digit pitchers. Again, I think it's just sort of, it looks weird, and I like that it sort of challenges my sense of what a pitcher is supposed to look like.
It looks like a position player on the mound.
Yeah, but I like that. I love it when that happens. Because it's like I wouldn't want to see it every game, but I like that it's just sort of weird and different, like a 17-inning game or something like that, And so in Game 6 of last year's World Series, Blake Snell of the Rays and Julio Urias of the Dodgers, they wear number 4 and number 7 respectively. They both appeared in that game, and I'm pretty sure it was the first time ever that 2 single-digit pitchers appeared in the same World Series game. And I got a big kick out of that. To me, that was like a great sort of uniform quirk to be happening in the World Series.
It had to have been the first time, right?
I'm pretty sure. And I had been looking forward to it. Like, obviously, I knew that both of those pitchers were on the roster for those 2 teams. And what I was really hoping for was that they would start against each other, that they like a starting pitching matchup. But the Dodgers put Urias in the bullpen, so there was no chance of that.
Now going back to the Jays, didn't at one point they have pitchers wearing like number 0, 1, and 2 at the same time? Or because last year there was a 00, there was also a number 1. And then what was it?
And then they had a 99. I think they had
a 99. Ryu was 99.
Right, Ryu.
They had Clayton. Was it Clayton Andrews? Wore number 2, but I don't know if that was last year.
I don't think it was that.
Or it could have been the year before.
I don't recall that being last.
So if not, then we were very close to having a starting rotation with 0, 1, and 2.
Which it sounds like a basketball game, right? Like that's the kind of thing you could have in the NBA. I do think I mean, I'd have to look it up, but we'll have this in the show notes for this episode. I'm pretty sure the Jays like lead the league in single-digit pitchers like all time.
I don't know how that happened.
So speaking of the NBA, there have been situations where I think there has been a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the court at the same time. And in fact, I researched this a couple of years ago. Lots of NBA teams have done what the Blue Jays have done, which is have 0 and 00 on the roster at the same time. And in fact, the Portland Trailblazers have it right now. They have Damian Lillard wearing 00 and Carmelo Anthony wearing 0. And so I'll ask again, cool or not cool? Do you like that or not? Does the change of sport matter? Like, are you more okay with it in the NBA than you would be in baseball?
Well, it shouldn't make a difference, right?
No, different sports feel different.
What's the referee signal for 0 and 00?
I think the 0 is a fist, so 00 would be 2 fists. Yeah,
Double
I mean,
fist.
As long as it's not over 5 fingers, you're good, right?
Well, Rodman wore 70 something for a while.
Yeah. I mean, the NBA they do have the numerals over 5.
Is it cool? I mean, again, it's cool in that it's something that's different for me to say, hey, check that out. Do I think it should be able to be done? It doesn't seem to make sense that it can be done. And your Benito Santiago example is a great one in that there's no way that the Padres or Marlins would have allowed a player to wear number 9 while Santiago was wearing 09. Therefore, if we're being consistent, it should apply to 0 and 00 as well. But again, roulette board rules, as we talked about earlier, it seems to be different for this interesting number.
Yeah, 0 just seems to have its own set of rules or lack of rules.
Yeah, it's like a quirky personality or something, right?
Yeah.
Like it used to be the player that wore 13 was the unusual guy. Now it's the one who wears 00.
Right. It does sort of have that it gets you a little more attention, and you have to have a certain personality for it.
Right.
Now in the NFL, 00 and 0 were once allowed, and so Obert Logan of the Saints wore 0, and Kenny Burrow and Jim Otto, who I'm old enough to have seen play in the 70s, they wore 00. And in the NHL, also those numbers were at one time allowed. Neil Sheehy wore 0, and John Davidson and Marty Biron wore 00. But those numbers are not currently legal numbers in those two leagues.
Right.
Should they be?
Well, I don't know about the NFL's reason. I imagine it's similar to the NHL's. The NHL banned it because they were transitioning from analog to digital statistic, and the number 0, the number 0 in their stats, their statistic software, just didn't work. Like it didn't understand. It
literally did not compute.
Yes, there you go. Does not compute, and then they banned the number 0 for that reason.
I used to know that, and I had totally forgotten that. So thank you for reminding me. I totally forgotten that. But that's got to be like,
you can fix that now.
You could fix that now, right? Like that can't possibly be the state of digital statistic keeping technology now.
Well, no, the fact that if you go to the NHL's website now and you look up Neil Sheehy, who, by the way, is the only player to ever score a goal while wearing the number 0 in the NHL, it shows the number 0, right? So clearly they figured out a way to do it in their digital stat keeping. So, if you or I ever become commissioner of the NHL, that's got to be day one, right?
Well, it would be for me, but I'm asking, would it be for you?
It'd be up there, I think. I'm okay with 0 on there. I don't know if 0 and 00 at the same time is the only thing I'm unsure about. But hold on a second. Jim Otto, I know what he was doing with that 00, right? Like he's
right. So Jim Otto, the 2 zeros sort of mimicked his name, both the look of it with the 2 O's at the end, and also Otto.
Oh man,
Otto.
He's a step ahead of me. Good for him. Wow.
So yeah, I personally, I would like to see those numbers return.
No reason why not at this point.
Yeah. I think it would be fun. I think it would be interesting. I think 00. It's interesting that the 2 NHL players to have worn it, Davidson and Biron, are both goalies, because it feels to me like a goalie kind of number. It's got that sort of boxcars, like broad, like line of defense. Like it's a big, thick number. Like just try and get it past 00. You know.
Well, yeah. Well, in terms of how it looks, right? Goalies, at least for a spell, they'd usually wear a number in the like 30 or 33, or like you say, 2 wide numbers. And 00 sort of fits that bill. Now, did you see Marty Biron's stats when he wore 00?
I did not. Would you? Was it not a lucky number for him?
No, he did terrible, and it's hard to blame him for it because he was like a 17-year-old kid that was called up in an emergency role, and they just handed him this jersey. He didn't ask for it, but yeah, he got lit up bad, and the number got taken out of circulation shortly after that. So the NHL number 0 and number 99 banned or retired.
Yeah.
You can wear 1 to 98.
Now, in college football, the NCAA just this past season, the 2020 season, started allowing 00 as a legal number, which they had not previously allowed. And what I thought was interesting was that a lot of schools started using it as almost like a reward or a status thing, like which player gets to wear single zero, like that it was really a distinction. And I guess for most of these schools, it was literally, this player gets to be the first player in school history to wear zero. And so it became like a little reward or a motivator or whatever, which I thought was pretty cool. And it was going to all sorts of different like, you could be a linebacker, or there was at least one quarterback.
Is this a season-long thing, or is like week to week of players?
So for some schools they rotated it, but for most schools it was, this season, this player is gonna.
It's almost like a de facto getting the C on your jersey,
right? It was almost like a captain kind of thing, yeah, which I thought was interesting. And I don't think the NCAA necessarily intended or foresaw that it would play out that way, but it was interesting to see, and I kind of liked that.
It's fun. I think that it's an interesting idea. I don't know if I like players changing numbers every week. Right.
No, I don't. And you can really only do that in college sports. Yeah. Like, I don't think that would fly.
There needs to be some sort of consistency.
Yeah, but there's a few schools that do that where they award, like Virginia Tech gives out the Beamer number 20. I think it's 25. That rotates each week, and so there's certain schools that have these protocols, and I guess they're allowed to do it. And that's, I also like that there can be something that isn't copycatted all over the place, right? That's their thing. It's a Virginia Tech thing, and that like they own that, and okay, good for them.
Or what, Ohio State with the stickers on the helmet?
Yeah, well, everyone has stickers on the helmet at this point.
I'm not a college fan. Don't tell me.
Well, that's a subject for a different episode about which sports we like and which ones we don't. Last question about uniform numbers. What about 3-digit numbers? And like, there's always the joke that like, oh, the Yankees have retired so many numbers, and it isn't really so many, but when you have 100 numbers,
you'd have to retire 60 numbers.
You'd have to retire a lot, but that's the joke. The Yankees have retired so many numbers that we're gonna have to go to 3-digit numbers. And there are like some, like in Mexican soccer, I think some youth leagues or junior leagues, that it's not uncommon actually to see.
We've seen some college players wear triple-digit numbers before, haven't we?
During the centennial year, which was 69, there were a few players, which was the college football centennial, there were a few players who wore 100 for that. I gotta say, that's where I would personally draw the line. Like, I don't want to see players with 3-digit numbers, not for the Yankees or for anybody else. That's where I would say, like, you gotta come up with some other. I'd rather see like 0, 5 and 0,
that would be better. So to me, it's more about the appearance on the jersey. 3-digit number sounds crazy unless it's something like 111.
Right, 3 narrow numerals.
Yeah, you could make that work, but no, you can't do a triple-digit number. It looks ridiculous. If you ever get to the point where you need to go 3 digits, you just stop retiring numbers.
Right. Bring some back out. Bring numbers back into circulation.
I would rather that before triple-digit numbers.
Right. All right. I agree. We're on the same page there. All right. I would say, Chris, I think we've wrapped up this notion of talking about uniform numbers. And I would say you had plenty to contribute for a guy who says he's not that into the numbers game.
And to be fair, we focused on one number pretty much.
0 and 00. Yeah. But it turns out to be, like so many uniform related topics, an unexpectedly deep rabbit hole.
Of course. Do we have a question of the week this week?
We do have a question of the week. So every week we take a question from a listener. And at the end of the show, we'll tell you how you can submit a question. And this week's is from listener Matt Burke, who asks, which of the NHL's reverse retro uniforms should be promoted to full-time status? And I have some thoughts about this, and I assume you do as well. Why don't you go first?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is the Los Angeles Kings. I love the combination of I'm going to call it purple. Sorry, Jack Kent Cook. It's called purple. Purple and gold with the 90s logo on the front. It's sort of mashing together the Kings' two most prominent eras in terms of their identity and their uniforms. I know they've won a couple of cups with the current uniform. It's just not an interesting look to me. And everyone knows the Kings as purple and gold. Like in my book with Todd, which I'm pointing to on video, if I can figure it out. There we go. We decided to put the LA Kings chapter in purple and gold rather than their current color scheme, just because we felt it was so distinctive to that team. And anytime you have a chance to own a color scheme in a sport, in a league, I say you go for it. especially when it's a color scheme that your fans actually like and doesn't look bad. In my opinion, the original Kings uniforms, they weren't that amazing with the design they had. And for 1 year, they even wore head to toe yellow, like yellow helmets, yellow jerseys, yellow pants, yellow socks. That's an awful look. But this sort of modern take on the purple and gold with the more modern logo, which, I mean, I'm using the word modern, but it was 30 years old, I think is a great look. And I think it's something the Kings should pursue as a full-time basis. And I'd love to see a yellow version of that uniform that they could wear on the road.
So I also would like to see a yellow uniform promoted to full-time status, and that is the Bruins reverse retro uniform. When I saw that game this past Sunday in Lake Tahoe when they played the Flyers, now I liked that jersey when they just released the jersey. You know, the initial reverse retro release didn't show the full uniform; it was just the jerseys, and I immediately said, "Oh, that's one of the best ones." But seeing the full uniform, oh my God, it is so good. With the personally with the black pants, the black helmet, and the yellow socks, I think it's to me, they could wear that every single game because it's yellow. You know, they could wear it again. You know, it could be against as long as the other team isn't wearing yellow. Like that could be a home uniform. It can be a road uniform. It's perfection. I love it. And I know, you know, Bruins fans, obviously they think of black as their color and they don't want to give up the black. But to me, that is one good looking hockey uniform. I really love that shade of yellow. Maybe they call it gold. I don't know if, you know, no team ever says yellow, right? They always say, no matter what it is, they call it gold because it sounds better. But I think that Bruins reverse retro uniform looks fantastic.
Now you would use that ahead of their current black or their current white?
I would. Yeah. I actually would. See, I like those that period where they actually had the black jersey with the yellow socks. That brief period where you see some old photos of Bobby Orr wearing that. I really like the yellow socks, and I think with that yellow jersey, I think I loved it. Just watching that game, man, it was pure eye candy. That Lake Tahoe game.
And yellow used to be their primary road jersey or dark jersey.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I don't really expect them to wear it both home and the road, but they should at least do one of like they should use it as one of their primary uniforms. I think it's great. Awesome. Definitely better than the white.
Yeah, absolutely. Good answer.
Chris, I think we have once again come to the end of an episode of Unified.
We did it. Look at that. It's becoming easier and easier every week.
It is actually. No, this is a really good one. I really enjoyed this. And I want to thank you for going along with the topic that I know you felt like you weren't in your comfort zone or it wasn't in your wheelhouse or whatever. But actually, I thought you had a lot of really interesting things to say. And it was and it was actually really fun to have a topic where we were talking about both of our favorite teams. So that was
isn't that unusual? And not only is it the Stroman Walker thing, but also the fact that the Jays with the 85 team.
Right.
Like that's some sort of universe thing, universe.
Yeah.
Too bad we didn't get that World Series in 2015.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens in this World Series coming up. So I'll take us out. Unified is a joint production of UniWatch and SportsLogos.Net. Our producer editor is Chris Fratterigo. Show notes for this episode are available at our website, unified.show. You can follow us on Twitter at UnifiedCast. Our organ music that you hear at the beginning of the episode is by the Seattle band Boat. If you're listening to us on audio, you can also see video versions of our episodes at youtube.com/sportslogos. The animation at the start of the video is by Michael Princip. Our brand new Unified logo that appears at the end of that animation, and I think it looks really good, is by Brian Gundel. To submit a question for our Question of the Week segment or to inquire about advertising or anything else, email us at info@unified.show. If you like our show, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And that's it for this episode. Stay well, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.